And welcome to a very special edition of your BTS podcast. This week is Mental Health Week, and we want to look at the human side of financial planning, specifically the impact that a good advisor can have, the interpersonal skills needed, and how good financial planning advice can make a real difference to people's well-being. The Money and Pensions Service define financial well-being as feeling secure and in control. It's about making the most of your money from day to day, dealing with the unexpected and being on track for a healthy financial future. In short, financially resilient, confident and empowered. According to the Money and Pensions Service, people who experience financial well-being are less stressed about money. This in turn has positive effects on their overall mental and physical health and on their relationships. Whilst this is likely to make a lot of sense to a lot of people, many people don't experience good financial well-being. Financial stress is known to be one of the leading contributors to poor mental health, which makes the role of a financial advisor a critical one. But do we instantly attribute the role of a financial advisor in this way? Probably not. My name is Natalie Dawes, and I am part of the business development team and candidate support team at BTS. And today, helping us to understand how financial advisors and planners can make a difference to client wellbeing, we are joined by Tina Still, who is Principal of Still Aspire Financial Management. Hello, Tina.
Hello. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm really good, thank you, and it is great to have you with us today. So for the benefit of our listeners, could you give us a brief introduction of how you came to be a financial advisor?
Yes, of course. Yeah, my background is finance, but not financial advice. I started my career as a chartered accountant from university, did accountancy at university, went into industry, not into practice, worked my way up into various different roles, ended up as head of finance in the education sector, so move out of industry into education. The bits I loved along the way was the logic, the strategy, the budgeting, the forecasting, the making a difference to a business. I didn't love the balance sheets and the statutory accounts, a bit boring, and also past focused. So yes, they're really important, they need doing, but I didn't see the benefit of, apart from the legal requirement to do them, to help the company move forward. So it's very much focused on that forward planning. The other part of all my jobs that I loved was the well-being of my teams. So spotting strengths and weaknesses, upskilling people, educating them, seeing them grow in confidence and knowledge. So I did all of that, and alongside all of my careers, I've done elements of teaching. So I taught level 1 bookkeeping, and I've also taught degree accounts. Again, my love of knowledge and education along the way was a huge passion of mine, and seeing people grow and make a difference to them. So all of that combined, I decided after my second child that I wanted to run my own business and didn't quite know what I was going to do. I was thinking accountancy consultancy was a logic way to go, but then I met somebody from St. James's Place who talked to me about what they do as a financial advisor. And at that point, everything seemed to click into place. I would get to use all of my finance logic, strategy, planning skills alongside the financial wellbeing and education to help people and give them the knowledge and skills to help improve their lives. So that's how I ended up starting my business.
In a nutshell, but that was absolutely brilliant. For those of you who are listening in, you can't see Tina right now. I can, and you can really sort of see how passionate she is just from her face, which is brilliant, and it absolutely comes across as well. What really I find fascinating in there is that background in education. And it's something that we come across a lot within financial services as a potential route into the industry. Bizarrely, I've got a background in education as well, so perhaps that's something that we have in common there. What sort of parts of that role within education do you find the most useful doing what you're doing now in your role as a financial advisor?
I think it's the understanding that everyone's knowledge will be at a different level. So
Mm.
especially teaching from the level one to the degree accounts. I also, back in the day, was a dance teacher as well. So teaching's kind of been a theme, a little bit different. Dancing, finance person, has been a theme. And I think it's having the skill set to have the patience to wait for people to get to the level they need to get to, and everyone's level will be different, so it's taking that patience and care to understand where they are, do they fully understand, and really ensuring that people fully understand, because quite often, I don't know if you were the same, but back in the day when I was at school, I'd nod along even if I didn't quite understand, and wouldn't always put my hands up and go, I don't get it, for fear of, I should get it. And I think there's a lot of that attached to everything, including finances, is that people feel they should know. So actually getting that trusted relationship and understanding and knowing what they actually know and giving them a safe space to ask those questions is what I kind of bring from my education world.
Absolutely. And I think there's some really key things you said there around particularly the safe space and the trust elements, which is so key to that relationship between client and financial advisor, isn't it? So how do you go about developing that and giving that person or making that person feel that they have that safe space?
Yeah, great question. I think it is about the trust no like as well. I think if people have come through referral routes, they already have an element of that trust to start with. But it's about the way I do my financial advice process. I call it a health check. I used to call it a review. Review, the word seems a bit scary for people, so I call it a health check. It's very laid back. We chat, we draw their life on a page, we get them talking about things that they enjoy and they like, get them relaxed.
Mm.
Then, they know they can trust you, they open up more, and then the finance elements start to come out. So it's about developing the relationship first to give them the opportunity to have the safe space.
Mm. Absolutely. And in turn comes even further trust, doesn't it? Absolutely. And I think you've made some really good points there for any sort of people that are training to be financial advisors, because we come from an exams orientated environment. That's what we do here. But we also recognize it's not just about exams. In fact, that's just a very small piece of what it is you need to be a well-rounded financial advisor. So, what other sort of skills would you say are really important, particularly focusing on that safe space that we want to create for our clients, but equally people around us, other support teams, colleagues, etc.?
Yeah, I think absolutely exams is all what it's about at the beginning, isn't it? And you come out and you think, I know everything, but actually you don't know how to do the job, which, yes, it is quite a big jump. And having the support behind you is really crucial at that point. I think listening is a massive skill set that you need as an advisor or anyone in education, to listen to what people want, but also sometimes they don't know what they want because they don't know about their finances, but listening to what the issues might be, or what they want for the future, and fully understanding them as a person to give them that best advice. To create the safe space and to enable those conversations to be as helpful and useful as possible is to give them the opportunity to ask questions. And very much at the start of those conversations, I always say, before we started talking about anything in detail, is no question is a silly question. And I think that's a really,
So
really
true.
key thing to start at the beginning, because it might be the tiniest thing, but it might be a massive deal to them. And it might have been causing anxiety, affecting the well-being. And it might be such a simple little thing we can talk about. But they maybe don't ask that if you don't say, you can ask any questions. So yeah, that's one of the things that I always open with, and it really does help people have the confidence to come forward.
When you're having those conversations with a new client or a client that you might have had for a period of time, because let's face it, it's not just about at the beginning of the relationship, it's something that's got to be maintained, that safe space, the trust. But equally, people have life events that can throw them. There can be a wobble of some sort. So, how do you go about managing that?
Again, the time and the patience,
Mm.
knowing, reading what's right at the right time for them and helping and supporting them through it. When I was back in education, as a leader, I did the Myers-Briggs personality
Yeah.
And that was amazing. So I have a more of an understanding, because I went through that, of different personalities and who needs what support, and spotting. Do they want more detail? Do they just want to chat? Do they need a bit of space? And knowing how to be around people. Uh,
Yeah.
and I had a client, for example, who was going through a divorce. It was a brand new client to me. At the beginning, she just needed to talk,
Mm.
not particularly about finance. Just needed to talk. Had so much going on. It was a start in her head. She was starting the process, but she hadn't officially started the process. So, I mean, even simple questions about how to get her own credit card, because her partner had done everything financial. So little tiny things, and again, making it a safe space to be okay, to be upset. It's okay to ask those questions. And now we've been working together for 2.5 years, and she is fully in control of her budget. She has her own house. She's so confident. And we've had so many meetings along the way that we just chip away at little bits. And she knows if she has a question now, she's straight on the phone or straight on a Zoom call or face-to-face meeting to ask that little question before it beds in and kind of causes that anxiety. So I think for people to have that kind of relationship with a financial advisor, it's there throughout their life then, because things will change.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk a lot, don't we, about financial advisors and that relationship piece and building that relationship so that it is long term, because that is so important when you're dealing with something as personal as someone's personal finances. Um, that is an amazing story, by the way, in regard to that lady, and a great example of when an individual can be at a very vulnerable stage of their life. And of course, we can bring in sort of consumer duty here as well, etc., and on all of the rules that we must follow as advisors, and rightly so. But it does very naturally bring us back to the financial well-being piece, because that is a very large part of that. Are there other clients that you've worked with where you have noted that their financial well-being is particularly low, and you've helped them overcome that?
Yes, it's surprising. I think a lot of people's perception of financial well-being being low is maybe people who are struggling, who maybe don't have much. I've found over the almost 6 years I've been doing this now, it's most people actually, regardless of their situations, regardless of what they have, most people's well-being is not that high. And that is through the educational part. So even people, I had a client about a year ago, quite experienced, quite high level in a company, knew lots about finance, but still didn't have that confidence that what they knew was quite there, and there was gaps, and actually, again, to work with them on those smaller gaps and help them and build their confidence. They are a different person now. They are so much happier. You can see the body language when they come on the call is that I'm sorted. I've got that peace of mind. So people's financial, I can give you specific examples of different situations, but actually overall, most people need this.
Absolutely that. And I think the other side to it is it's a very, when you think about the population, there's a very small percentage of people that actually have a financial advisor. So it then poses the question, well, the impact that a financial advisor can have, and using just the couple of examples that you've given there, is absolutely huge. The next problem that we've got is, have we got enough financial advisors? Is there a gap? And we know there absolutely is. So how do we encourage more people to come into the industry so that we can fill that gap in the market, but equally provide this really fantastic financial well-being structure for people? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think there is a gap, but I also think there's a whole piece around education as to what a financial advisor does. Um, Especially if I mention accountant, financial advisor in the same sentence, I'm meeting people and they get very confused, because and why wouldn't they? If you're not in that industry, is an accountant different to a financial advisor? A lot of people don't know. And it's, I think, the educate probably a conversation for another day, but education system, if there was something when people were younger to teach them about what these careers might be, that might help people go into things like this. Because I was never told about financial advisor when I was doing my career chat with schools. I was told about accountancy. That was the only finance thing. So actually maybe some education earlier on about what options people have, what it means, and what a difference it may make. So people going into accountancy that I met, again, not stereotyping, were mainly maybe quieter, wanted their head down, wanted to do that past history checking, not always. And I think financial advice isn't that. It's very much more about the people, it's about the social aspect, it's about getting to know people, that relationship building. So it's a very different element to finance, which is a very valid career for a lot of people.
100%. And I do wonder also, because where you sort of said about the education piece, it's a bigger thing than that, isn't it? Because the financial education piece needs to start even earlier than at those stages where you're having conversations about careers. There's loads of stuff in the media and on social media right now around trying to bring into the education system more information about generic everyday stuff about finances, because there isn't enough of it. And if there were more of that in school, would that have a much bigger impact on financial well-being, or how we view financial well-being? And sort of picking up on your comments earlier on around how actually in the main it impacts everyone. It's not a small minority of people that have low financial well-being. If that was counteracted earlier on in school or in other educational settings, would that piece look better when people go out into the big wide world?
I believe so, absolutely. As part of my business for my CSR, corporate social responsibility, I do free financial wellbeing and education sessions. I'm doing that for businesses and charities, corporates at the moment. I would love to do that in schools, but I'm growing the business once there's I'll be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people when I do these for businesses, and they could be from the shareholders and directors to, the people starting out in their careers. The information I give is quite generic, obviously, because it's just an education session, but the difference it can make to people and the follow-up questions and calls, and people don't know how to budget, and having a starting point. And I did one where there was a lady who all she wanted was a garden for her little girl, and she was in a council house, and she just didn't know how to get that deposit or extra money to be able to do that. And I literally just went on a call and talked to her about how to split her expenses between discretionary, fixed, variable, thinking about things in a different way. And she was in floods of tears. And straight away, she said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it now. When I put down the call. And she called me back a couple of days later, and she was like a different person. She was so full of energy. She said she's done her budget, she's split them. She now knows how she can save £50 a month. And she's put a picture of it on her fridge, and with a garden picture next to it of what she's going to achieve. And just thinking that is a massive difference. And it was, a 10-20 minute call that I had with somebody. But if that had been taught at school, she might be in a different situation now.
Absolutely that, but thanks to you, she is in that different situation. That must have made you feel amazing.
Yeah, I got goosebumps when I was talking about it then. I love doing what I do. As you said, I can probably, see from my face, but I did this to make a difference. And obviously it is a career, and, and I am running a business, but I did it to make a difference to people and people's lives and businesses.
Yeah, I think it's not something that we talk about often enough, actually, that the soft, fluffy stuff, and actually how rewarding this type of role really is. And it's quite the educational piece that we give to clients, or businesses, charities, or educational sectors that we go out and talk to. It's so empowering for them because of the difference that it makes, and it just like, yeah, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Talking more about your business now, because you've sort of mentioned that you're looking to grow your business, and I'm just from the few things that you've said here today, there's only one of you, I'm assuming, and there's only so many hours a day you can work, so you're stretched, and I can tell that you want to make even more of a difference. So what does that business growth look like to you, and what do you want to bring to the party with that?
Yeah, great question again. My back office is sorted. I have all the support on the admin and power planning and all that side. I would like a new advisor sort of end of this year, next year, and then to grow that onwards. But for me, it's so crucial that that person is the right person. So my logo, my business is you can't see it. I know we're talking on here, but it's three petals in a circle. So it's the three elements of finance, I call it, which is financial advice, well-being, and education. And it's in a trusted circle. So I think to find somebody who, yes, has a logical mind for strategy and planning, and there are lots of exams we have to do to get
Yeah.
to that level. That's really, really important. But I think for me, it's more important that the person has the passion to make a difference. And I know our industry, there are lots of people that think it's salesy, and it shouldn't be, or it's not that, because there's so much more to it. So finding the right person who has that passion for making a difference, and then as I found over the 6 years, business will follow, because that trusted advisor will get referrals, and people want that help. They need that help. So they just need to know that there's someone there to help and guide them.
100%. And I'm really glad that you said that as well, because I think this industry can be deemed, for those that don't know, and it's almost like we've got this sort of I don't know, a fence around us or something. And unless you're inside that sort of fenced area, you're not really sure what goes on inside. And because of that, you sort of make these things up in your mind. And one of the things that comes out is that sales orientated environment. And for me, if it's done in the right way, and very much like the way you're talking, it shouldn't feel like that. So I completely agree with you, Tina, and I love that you've gone down that route. So when you're looking to find this individual and grow your business, what sort of skills would you say that person needs to have?
Emotional intelligence, I would, it's probably at the top of the list, and that's the understanding people, the knowing when to listen, when to jump in, when to help, how to make them feel comfortable, and again, knowing personality types and things like that. It's things that, absolutely can be taught in some way through some of those things that I talked about, the Myers-Briggs, and there's others around. Um, but somebody who, I think if you have that true passion for making a difference and wanting to help people, then the rest comes quite naturally.
In my background, one thing that was always said was around attitude is everything. Everything else just comes. And that sort of picks up on what you've just said there. If your attitude is right, what your desires are, what you're wanting to achieve is where it needs to be for a certain role that you're looking at, it does feel very natural that the other bits just follow. And some of that can absolutely be taught. I do wonder though, and I'm keen to get your thoughts on this. Do you think, in regards to particularly talking around the personality type stuff, Myers-Briggs, etc., there's a lot of what we do with people, the how we communicate, starts with ourselves and knowing ourselves.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Yeah. So again, part of that leadership course that I
Mm.
did many, many years ago, I understood myself. And if you understand yourself, you know more about how you come across. Because
Yeah.
understanding how you come across and how other people see you, and also asking for feedback. I do a lot of that. So, my clients, I think, get a great experience, but actually, do they? So I ask for that feedback. I use the Vouch4 platform. I have really lovely 85-star reviews. They're all 5 stars. If I'm having a bad day, I go and read them. Um, but actually, that, is the reason that I do this, because their thoughts and feelings of how they now feel, and having the confidence to have gone through a meeting with me in the first place, and then seeing that outcome, I know that I'm doing the right thing. But it's really important at the beginning to check that, to check you're doing what you're doing, to ask for that feedback, whether you do it on a platform or you just do it verbally. But I've always done that from the beginning. And again, that comes from my corporate background of doing that with my teams and asking for feedback as a manager. I think that's really important.
Yeah, if it's not something you're used to, though, it can feel really difficult, can't it? And bizarrely, I was having a conversation with somebody this morning, that had some feedback. It was voluntary feedback that was given to them, and the power that that feedback had on that individual was huge, because they thought that the task that they were talking about, they hadn't done a very good job. they then received this feedback, and of course it gave them such a massive lift, which prompted me to say, I didn't doubt you in the first place, so you have nothing to worry about, the reassuring sort of comments, and rightfully so. But I'm very much like you. I seek feedback, and when you know there's a process that allows for feedback and it doesn't come, I'm sort of sat here going, right, I'm gonna need to ask for that, because it's important. Because how else do we improve? How do we get better at what we're doing, or tweak our structures and things like that? So I completely agree. I think it's really, really important.
I just thought of one other thing actually leading on from that, if I can jump in. I was thinking of when
Please
you
do.
spoke about the comments affecting people, actually going back to those client meetings and that safe space. That is another thing that I do, is tell people they're absolutely not on their own. They're not the only one that feels like this. Because sometimes, because no one talks about finance in public, to their friends, to their family sometimes, actually knowing that you're not on your own. That's
Mm.
okay. And that can have a really big impact on people, just even a simple comment like that, which is very true.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's almost a bit of a don't talk about that subject. We can't talk about that to this person or that person. And again, if an individual feels particularly personal, which so many people do, about talking about finances, having that trusted person such as yourself in their life can relieve so much anxiety, can't it? What's your views on the overall sort of well-being position, because we're particularly focused on that financial well-being piece, but of course there's other areas. So if one area is a little bit off, does that impact the others? Does that have an overall effect, do you think?
Absolutely, I think it does. I think they're very interlinked. I think the mental and physical well-being are talked about a lot. And
Mm.
as you said at the beginning, the stats around the financial well-being effect and other things is massive. But yes, it works the other way around. But actually doing the financial education piece and getting people in that settled place where they're comfortable, if we had protection, the right protection in place, if there was that mental or physical well-being that affected them, might not affect their financial well-being as much, because they know they've got that protection in place. And they can still get by. So I think they're all completely interlinked, and it's looking after the person as a whole. But financial well-being is the bit that is often not talked about and a little bit forgotten.
Where you say about their financial situation being looked after as a whole, that's really key as well, because I think that there's a misconception, isn't there? People hear the words financial advisor and they think, I don't need to see a financial advisor because I haven't got loads and loads of money. But
I
it
hear
isn't
that.
like that. Yeah, and admittedly, there are advisors that will deal with just very high net worth clients, but do the majority of us need a financial advisor in some way, shape, or form?
Absolutely. I mean, I chose at the beginning not to set limits, because I didn't want to exclude anybody. I want to be as diverse and accessible as possible, because I think, again, that is that pillar of my branding, that is the financial well-being. It encompasses everybody. And so I have clients that just have a protection policy because that's what they need and that's what they can afford, all the way up to the shareholders and directors and the high net worth clients. And every single person goes through the same journey with me, that life plan, because everybody has a life plan.
Mm.
Everybody has ideas of what they want to do in the future. It's all different for everybody, but there's financial elements that'll affect that all the way through. So yes, I think financial advice is for absolutely anybody.
Absolutely. How can we encourage more people then to seek financial advice? We've sort of talked about the real importance of it, but we know that people aren't doing it. So how can we encourage that?
I think spreading the word, I think getting out there, talking about what financial advice is, how it can make a difference, how it can make you feel. I've got some testimonial videos on my website so people can see real people talking about the experience. And I do that obviously to help the business as well, but mainly to help people have the confidence to come forward. And lots of different people in different situations I've tried to capture to give people that confidence, is it's okay for me to have advice. So I think talking, sharing, anything we can do, these kind of type of podcasts are brilliant, to kind of share that message of what financial advice really is.
Absolutely, that I completely agree. So we've talked about the clients and how important it is for them, and we've also talked about advisors and different types of skills that they might need to be able to provide that really well-rounded advice piece, because it's not just about the exams, it's very much about those soft skills as well. Um, can you tell me about the journey that you took to be an advisor and the sort of training that you went through and what that looked like?
Yes, that seems a long time ago now, wasn't it? So yes, about six and a half years ago, I decided to be an advisor. That was the first step, understanding what they did and thinking, oh yes, I can use all my skill set to do this. I then did lots of research as to whether to go independent, whether to go as an associate of a bigger firm. St James's Place for me was the right one. Their ethos, their business, their investment management was brilliant in my mind. So I joined their academy, went through their training program, which was about 6 months long, and did all my exams while I was in there. Was exempt from a couple because of my chartered accountancy exam. Quite nice. And during that process, obviously, we did the exams, but we also learnt the day job, the systems, all those, but also learnt how to listen, how to advise, how to look at people as a whole. They did that exercise. And then after 6 months, was let loose and was qualified and started building those relationships. I chose to build very slowly and organically at the beginning. I know advisors and things do buy leads, they buy clients from other people. I chose not to do that. And I've just grown it through referrals, word of mouth, and by providing a service that other people want to share, that's a good thing to do.
What do you think was the most powerful piece of training that you had during that process that kind of still sticks with you today?
It was the life plan for me. It was doing that literally simple talking exercise about what people want out of life, but actually, because we've already captured what they have, the assets, liabilities, income and expenditure, drawing people's life on a page when you have that strategic mind of, right, that goes there, that goes there. It is a financial jigsaw. So as people are relaxed, then they're talking about what they want to do in life. I am filling in all the gaps about what they have, where that's going to go, where there is a gap, how can I help, what might they need. So that for me was a perfect picture of how I could move my business forward with using all my skill set.
It is exactly that. It's a picture, and I don't know what that looks like to you. And I can't see any pieces of paper right now for the benefit of the listeners, but she's just described that beautifully. But I've got a really lovely image in my head of what that looks like using your jigsaw puzzles as well. And you're right, it is a jigsaw puzzle, and it's about putting all those pieces together. With perhaps a few pieces missing in the beginning, and of course you're going to work together to fill those. But I love that, and I think visual representation of financial planning is so key because we all see things differently, we hear things differently, don't we? So we have to adapt the way we are delivering that information and the advice that we are recommending. So I love that. I am intrigued as to what this life plan looks like to Tina, and I would love to see one to see if it's somewhere along the lines of what I've got in my mind.
Yeah, they
Excellent.
are quite scribbly, but often as well, when you're talking about the ongoing advice, come back every 12 months at least, if not more often, as things happen in life, people reach out. I go back to that life plan. Where are we? How are we doing? Are we still on track? And then you can absolutely catch up and you want to build that relationship as well. And it's so important to know those, but it affects the finances. So just making sure they are on track to where they still want to be. And, is there anything to pick up on?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned earlier on as well about different options that you had when you were coming into financial advice. You chose the SJP route. You also spoke about before you decided on that definitively that you were looking at independent versus restricted. Now, this is a subject matter, isn't it? That can, I think, have an impact on whether somebody does reach out to a financial advisor or not. And again, I think there's misconceptions around what they each mean. So it might be good for us to sort of cover some of that off as well, if that's okay with you. So talk to me about why you chose the SJP route, because that's a restricted route. So has that impacted the advice that you can give?
No. Well, yes and no, in a good way, not restricted it. But yeah, I think the terms restricted is maybe not the right word. Because yes, we have a panel of providers. Yes, we have certain investments that we can use, but because St James's Place are FTSE 100 company, they are so big, they have the resources to go out there, find the best fund managers, find the best insurers, mortgage providers, whatever it might be. They've done that research. They do that for us. So the panel of providers and investment options that we have are already the best of breed, in my opinion, and obviously in SJP's as well. So restricted sounds negative, but for
It
me,
does.
it was a massive positive, which is why I decided to work with them.
Amazing. And I think it is really important to talk about this, but you saying that the word restricted sounds negative, absolutely right. And it's off-putting, I think, to some people. And I know that I have conversations with um, our candidates who are wanting to come into the industry, some of them career changers, some of them straight out of that sort of university position, and some that already work within industry that aren't yet within that advising role, but looking at it. And I cannot tell you the amount of conversations I've had where they've gone, well, I don't want to be restricted because it means I won't be able to offer the best advice. But that doesn't actually ring true in practice, does it?
No, no. And I did think because of my background, going independent and doing it myself, and I researched a lot, I couldn't do what St James's Place as an organisation does myself. I just wouldn't have the resources, the capacity to do that. So yeah, I think it's understanding both and knowing what's right for you. But I do think the term restricted just needs changing. It just needs to be something a little bit more positive. Um,
Absolutely. I think we could say that about a lot of the terminology within financial services, though, couldn't we? Because how many acronyms do we have? How
yeah,
many bizarre other wordings do we have for things that make it sound something that it isn't, is misleading. And but thank goodness we have financial advisors to be able to sort of break down those barriers. Oh my goodness me. I don't think I've ever known because I've had worked in various industries throughout my career somehow attached to financial services in some way, shape, or form, or education. But I don't think I know of any other industry that has so many complex wordings, word scenarios. But it does mean that that advice piece is all the more important. And as we sort of talked about earlier on, it really is about breaking down those barriers, making financial advice more aware out there and sort of getting it out to the general public and encouraging people to think about that financial advice piece for them. But equally, we do need to bring in more people to be able to cope with perhaps the demand that we're going to cause, Tina.
that would.
To kind of round up, I guess I just want to ask you, what would you say to anyone that perhaps is struggling with financial well-being in some way, shape, or form, that currently isn't seeking any advice? Or perhaps you know someone, i.e., you or I would know somebody. What would we say to them to ensure that they start that process?
I would say what people say about mental well-being as well, mental health is talk, have a chat. You
Yeah.
know, you're not going to lose anything by having a coffee and a chat with a financial advisor and asking some questions. It's not going to hurt. Nothing's going to happen. You know, take that step. And
Mm.
it might be a small step, might be a tiny step to start with, but it starts that conversation, and then you'll know what the options are from there.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valuable piece of advice because, on weeks like Mental Health Week, one of the first things that we say is just talk about it. Even if it's talking and having someone listen, or you being really brave and open and sort of talking about that thing that's making you feel slight discomfort or big discomfort, actually, just saying something is really powerful and is the start, isn't it? But we often hear that being talked about with regard to either mental or physical well-being, but not financial well-being. So perhaps that is the really key message from this podcast, in that they're absolutely the best place to start is to talk about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And have somebody, you know, that you feel comfortable with. And people,
Yeah.
different people and different personalities. So finding someone you feel comfortable talking to.
100%. Well, Tina, thank you so much for joining us today on Mental Health Week. We hope that this podcast has offered you some really valuable information. I have absolutely no doubt that Tina would be really happy for you to reach out to her directly. And of course, you can contact BTS at any point as well. Tina, thanks again for joining us again today, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Very much.